Welcome to Finding Forgiveness, a family fairy tale podcast. Join host Susan Gibson as she summons the courage to ask the hard questions, probes deep, dark secrets, and attempts to fill in the gaps while exploring the relationship between her and her mother. Discover the magic of self-discovery, relationship exploration, and the profound journey of forgiveness. Now, your host, Susan Gibson.
Have you ever experienced a moment in your life where your life changes dramatically from one moment to the next? A moment that has such an impact that it reshapes everything you thought you knew and foreshadows everything yet to come? Mine came during my senior year in high school. I was living with my best friend Darla and her family. My mother was living in West Virginia with her husband Ed. My dad was living in Mississippi, where he was originally from. One normal day in the life of a teenager, my dad called me as he did frequently. He said, "I received a letter from your mother today. It says that she thinks you're screwing up your life and she doesn't want to have anything to do with you. Enclosed were all of your various unpaid bills that she'd agreed to pay. Do you know what happened?" I started crying. And I said, "No, I don't know what happened. I still don't know what happened. After all these years, I still don't know." It's a question I've pondered ever since. There have been times where I've scrutinized those years leading up to the letter. It's been the topic with my therapist. There have been 2 over the years. It's been explored in personal transformation retreats I've attended and led. It's been topics of my speaking engagements. It's been ignored entirely, manifesting itself in my dreams, my insomnia, my sleepwalking, my excessive drinking habit of the past. There's no singular event to explain what happened, and that one person who could have helped me to understand it is now gone, my mother. It's a topic we never discussed. After the divorce of my parents in 1975, I lived with my dad for a couple of years. We had a good life together. Daddy did the best he could, raising a young teenage girl as a single parent. After living a while in another city from where I was born and raised, and where my parents had lived together, Daddy made arrangements for me to move in with my mother. He needed some time to figure out what's this next stage of his life. What was that going to be? What did that look like? And he needed to return to his home state of Mississippi. So the summer of 1977, I moved in with my mother. I was 15. She had a place in the country and I didn't drive, so I spent a lot of time alone, listening to music like Carly Simon and James Taylor, playing the piano, talking to my friends on the phone, going to the movies. I pretty much took care of myself, cooking my own meals, washing my own laundry, cleaning. Mom was still deep in a relationship with Ed, her boss. She was still working as an accountant, bookkeeper for his car dealership in our small rural community in northern Maine. She went back to court when I moved in with her to change custody from my father to herself. A source of a fight at that time. I didn't understand why she was doing that. She couldn't really tell me why she was doing that. She just wanted it to be done. And to be honest, I still don't understand why she did that, why she made that such a point at that time in our life together. Things were so tumultuous as it was, but there was a point she wanted to make to somebody, even though it was with the court and with the judge and with me, but there was a point she wanted to make. My sophomore year of high school was due to start up again very soon, and where we lived was not in my school district, so a decision had to be made to move into town so that I could go back to school with all my friends. So Mom asked me if I would prefer if she and Ed got married or just lived together, and I told her that I'd prefer if they got married. So we moved into a very nice house in town. It had a swimming pool and, it was a nice, great location. I could walk everywhere, be with my friends, which was just delightful, amazing. I love that. And Mom came home one day, not long after we moved into that house, and showed me her big diamond rings and said, Ed and I got married. I said, okay, all right. And what's curious about that is when I told Daddy, my dad, that they'd gotten married, he asked me, how do I know? And I said, a teenage response, because Mom told me they did. And at that time, I had no reason to doubt her. And he accepted that. And so the three of us, Mom, Ed, and I, lived together in that house for what would turn out to be about a year. I spent a lot of time alone still, but now I was in town with my friends. I spent a lot of time at the movies. I excelled at school, so I was extra involved there, playing in various bands, leading various civic organizations, having a blast. I continued to take care of myself, cooking my meals, doing my laundry, playing the piano, playing Pong. I loved Pong. Listening to music. I was completely infatuated with Andy Gibb at that time. I had a huge poster of him on the wall of my room. And about a year into this life together, Mom made the proclamation, Ed and I are moving to West Virginia so that we can start our life together. West Virginia was where he was from. I know you don't want to go with us. Well, she was right. I didn't want to go with them, but where was I going to live? No arrangements had been made for me. So I called my best friend, Darla. She's been my best friend since the 7th grade, and asked her if I could come live with her. She yelled to her mom, Mom, can Sue come live with us? And I heard the answer, yes. I moved in with Darla, her mother, and younger sister. She also had an older brother and sister, and life went on. Darla's mother was granted guardianship by the court, and financial arrangements were made between my mother, my father, and Darla's mother. Daddy would send money to me and to Darla's mother every month. Mom would pay any various bills, like my eye doctor. I've worn glasses since grade school. My gynecologist, dentist, orthodontist. I was still wearing a retainer as a carryover from braces at that time. What a life I had with Darla and her family. I was living with my best friend, sharing our teenage experiences, high school, proms, concerts, learning to drive, listening to music, the Beatles, David Bowie, boys, dreaming about our future selves. I had someone who cooked for us and we ate together every day as a family. I had someone who did my laundry along with everyone else's. We had house rules and structure, curfew being one of them. Most importantly, we had love as a family. I felt that love every day. And I was never alone. I came home after school to love in the home. I had a beautiful meal with my family. I went back to school for my extracurricular activities, being driven by an older sister of Darla's or a friend. I came home after those extracurricular activities to my family in a home filled with love. It was just an amazing experience, absolutely amazing experience. I'm forever grateful for the family that I found with Darla and her mother and sister and older brother and sister. It's amazing, amazing. The summer between my junior and senior years of high school, I spent in Mississippi with my dad and my family there. I loved being there with my Mississippi family and being with Daddy again. And, I cried. We both cried when I had to leave that summer. Just such love, such openness and honesty with each other. I could see how he had come into who he needed to be as a man, as a father. I understood a lot more about why he had to leave when he did, why he needed me to move in with my mother at that time. And he's such an incredible model of love for me, and it continues to this day. Honesty, integrity, the good and the bad, the love and the hurt, and the fun and everything else in between that comes between a father and daughter. Just an amazing experience. I spent 2 weeks in West Virginia with Mom and Ed. They worked together again. They had an office supply business in a little town in West Virginia. I spent a lot of time alone once again. After the 2 weeks were up, summer was over. I started my senior year, and that's when Daddy got the letter from Mom, and that's when he asked what happened. At the age of 50, I realized that I no longer needed to know what happened. I could finally let that question go, and this has allowed me to move towards forgiveness. This letting go allowed me to find forgiveness with my mother, and it was liberating, and my heart opened wide. A lot happened in those years between that letter and where I am today, and I didn't realize the extent of the break between us when Daddy read that letter to me. And I accepted it on some level when it happened. I accepted it. I didn't understand it. Because it was in my senior year, I was making plans for graduation, and it was an event I was very involved in. I played in the band, and I was performing a couple of duets with another classmate of mine who played guitar. I played piano, all these things that were going on. And I had so many tickets to give to graduation, as most graduation ceremonies do. Ours was no different. And, I'd given them to my grandmother, my Grammy, my mother's mother, and my mother's sister, Anella, and her husband, and her brother, Wallace, and his wife, and another aunt, a sister of Wallace's wife. And, I was going to be surrounded with family. And of course, Darla was going to be there. She and I graduated together, all our good friends from high school. Her mother was going to be there, and her family, who I knew and taken me in. It's such a loving family. And I decided to write my mother a letter and invite her to my graduation. And I said, I have tickets. I want you to come, share this experience with me. And I didn't hear anything back, but I didn't really expect to hear anything. She and I weren't ones to talk on the phone or, really communicate. I mean, that had ended for us long before. That sharing of lies, even when I lived with her, we didn't talk much to one another or really share a life. And so, there are many events that lead up to the night of graduation. At each event, all these people who I'd invited, my family, Darla's family, my friends and their family. It was a small rural community in northern Maine. We'd all grown up with each other. Our parents had all grown up with each other for the most part. Everybody had been taught by some of the same teachers in these generations. And one of the events leading up to graduation was standing in a circle with my Grammy and my aunts and uncles. And I looked at Grammy and I said, let me know when Mom's coming in, because I want to go to the airport with you to pick her up. And she looked at me very deeply. She took a hold of my forearms, and I took a hold of hers, and she just looked at me very intently in my eyes. And she said, oh dear, she's not coming. And the tears welled up. I didn't start sobbing, but the tears welled. And that's when I realized, this break was real, was deep. My dad was there also. He had come up from Mississippi to spend that week with me in all these events, my graduation. And I was going to be moving back to Mississippi with him after graduation. I'd been accepted into university in Mississippi and starting my next stage of my life back together with him at a new place. But I knew with my mother, this was deep. And while these other shifts had been happening between us over these years, the circumstances of my birth, the divorce from my dad, me saying I wanted to stay with my dad as sole custody, moving back in with her getting custody, the conversation about her marrying Ed, all of us moving in together, them moving away to start their life together without any arrangements made for me at that time. All of these things had led up to that point. The letter that she'd sent to my father had all led up to this point. And I realized this was a shift that was forever going to change my life going forward, that was forever going to change our life going forward. I certainly wasn't equipped to handle that at the age of 18, my younger self. It was something I accepted. It was the only way I knew how to move on from that, was to accept that. And it took a long time. It took 32 years for me to actually come to that moment of forgiveness with my mother. An act that was liberating for me, as I mentioned. An act that caused a shift in her, though we never talked about it. We never talked about all these things that have happened to us. We talked about a lot of other things, but never about the past. And I'll be honest, I don't know that I would go back and do that now. Now that she's passed, now that those times are behind us, and, as I realized in our last few hours together, that none of that actually, there was no longer a need to know about all these things that had gone on between us, because it all created a life experience with us. It brought us closer together in a very profound way. By having these shared experiences, brought us to a moment in time where she said she was sorry. And that was enough. That was enough. That was all I needed. And I told her that she did the best she could to prepare me for what was coming next. And I'll always love her for that. And I know she will always love me. And what I've realized over all these years is that while that love between a mother and child, love between mother and daughter is deeply rooted, it's deep in your core, there's also a whole village out there filled with love for every child, filled with love for every adult. Just have to be intentional sometimes about looking for it. We have to ask, we have to extend ourselves out there to say, can I come and be with you? Asking for that acceptance into that love of the village. It's not a given. It's not to be taken for granted. But boy, does it ever feel like a deep, soft cushion, pillow, cloud of love around you that just wraps its arms around you without asking you questions about why or what or when, without putting it back on you. What did you do? I think the question is more about this happened to you, and what can I do to love and support you? That's what I've learned from all of these experiences. And while all of these experiences leading up to this letter, and my dad asking me, do I know what happened? And really probing that question over these years, the what doesn't matter so much. The what doesn't matter so much. It's looking deeper inside into the love in my heart. It's raising my head and looking out around me at the love that surrounds me, and sharing that with others, with grace, with humility, offering love and support for others' hopes and dreams, like I was given as a teenager, supporting my hopes and dreams, all the people who loved me and surrounded me. I'm so grateful to have all of them around me. And my heart is just open so wide with love, gratitude, and appreciation. Do you have a defining moment that dramatically changed your life? Have you been able to let it go? Or are you still pondering what happened? I would love to hear from you and hear your story, hear how you're doing, and find out what I can do to love and support you. You can email me at hellosusan@findingforgivenesspodcast.com. Thank you for being with me today and listening to my podcast, Finding Forgiveness, a Family Fairy Tale. I welcome your comments as always. A big thank you to the team at Produce Your Podcast for helping me make my dreams a reality. Until next time, I'm Susan Gibson, signing off with gratitude and appreciation. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Finding Forgiveness, a family fairy tale podcast. To continue the conversation, visit findingforgivenesspodcast.com and send an email to hellosusan@findingforgivenesspodcast.com to share your story. Until we meet again.